this week's AI would agree. Still loving that new theme tune music. Thanks very much, marketing team. Really doing a good job with that. The guest for this week is Martin Anderson from Lemon Contact Centres. And interestingly, Martin decided to redecorate his room to match our colour scheme. So that's very, Martin, thanks very much for that effort. The check's in the post.
The brand is beautiful.
Great minds think alike and all that. Good to have you on the show. If you watch the show regularly, you'll know that we had Sarah Adderley from Help Me Angela a few weeks ago on the show. And on the back of those conversations, I decided to invite Martin onto the show. Martin's the co-founder, correct me if I'm wrong, co-founder, who provide the support to the Help Me Angela app in terms of their customer service team. So it's been a good relationship. It's been some interesting conversations around the back of things. And it's really cool to have you on the show, Martin. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you very much.
It's a really interesting story for Lemon Contact Centre itself. But do you want to give us just a little bit of background as to how you ended up in contact centres yourself, Martin? Because you've got a really your story is almost as radically different as mine. It'd be good to share that with some of the regular listeners.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll try to keep it concise because it's an odd one because I've never actually worked in a contact centre myself about my own, of course. And I was never really around them per se, really, until we got into it ourselves. But my background itself is engineering. When I left school, went on to do my A-levels. And then I was considering what was like I do at that point in time, whether I was going to go to university or not. I chose not to go down that path. And instead, I stumbled into an apprenticeship locally with a company called Comcast, big American company you've probably heard of. But back in the 90s, which is a long time ago now, it was around the dot-com boom time. Cable franchises were suddenly popping up all over the UK. Comcast owned the Northeast franchise for the cables. So they took that and then were digging the ground up with the cables in the ground and sort of building the engineering team to build the network essentially in the Northeast. And I came in to the company as an apprentice back then. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time doing that. It was a fantastic company to work for at a brilliant time in the 90s. Tech was the thing. The internet was going to save the world. And little did we know how far it could go, but it was. And the people were throwing money at it. So it was an enjoyable time. But even when I was involved with Comcast as an apprentice, my driver as a teenager was always to start my own business. It's just what I wanted to do. We want to be rock stars footballers. Tragically, my football career was cut short by lack of ability, so I had to find something better. And business was what it was. And I remember reading, lying in bed and reading Richard Branson's autobiography, Business Opportunity, and so back at the time, this was before entrepreneurship became quite cool through things like Dragon's Den, etc. So it's pretty edgy around there. No one else was talking about doing, wanting to be an entrepreneur, but I just felt I wanted to. And then, long story short, I went with a partner at the time, Leslie, just mutual friends at parties, etc. And she was a very similar boat. She really wanted to start her own business. She had a drive to do that. She was working for a Swedish company providing sort of the nurse call lines into the UK. She was used to a 24/7 environment and support in that as well. And how it had gone with Comcast, I was working in their network operations center, or NCC. So I was working with engineers, monitoring alarms, essentially, dispatching engineers, speaking to business customers over the phone, trying to resolve things and keep the network ticking along nicely. And the combination of that, when Leslie got talking, was, we want to start a business. Don't know what, there were Scoobies, how we're going to get it up and running. So we just took what we knew. And mine was like sitting in a 24/7 operations center. Leslie knew his 24/7 environment and said, maybe we can just take that and make a business out of it, make a fist of the business. And that's what we did. And we set up in 2003, probably pretty much 19 years to the date, but I don't know that bit, and started the business from there, really, and set up this 24/7 contact center with the two of us in an office above a garage, no heating, no hot water. We had a dog and a color gas heater, a mobile phone, a fax machine, and a pen and paper. And that was the contact center as Lemon started.
And that was probably still more advanced than the NHS is today, let's be fair.
Yes, but they were efficient.
It's an interesting story and not what I would imagine your average contact center startup consists of. I imagine though, especially in the early days when you had even fewer employees, operating a 24/7 environment must be really challenging to make sure that you had the right staffing at the right times and encourage that. I know from my discount retail days that losing one member of staff can be disastrous to your day. And how did you manage that in the early days?
In the early days, it was me and Leslie. We didn't have a choice. So I remember thinking about this like over the last bank holiday. Leslie, bless her, I still worked at Comcast for the company that first started. So Leslie literally worked round the clock. And I mean, round the clock, she would go in. She would go out on a Thursday and reappear on a Tuesday. It wasn't just 12-hour, 16-hour shift. We worked for days in a row, and then I would come from my shift because I was doing 12-hour shifts in my environment, and come in and let me go and get a shower and a change of clothes and go again. But it was that commitment to do it. We didn't know any better, I guess, that beautiful naivety of youth. We just wanted to do it. Had this kind of dream that if we just did it, it would work. And we were used to working 24/7, so that wasn't a problem to us, and social hours weren't an issue. And then, as you say, we then, all just wanted to get an employee, and that's what we did. We got our kind of first employee, and then we had two, then we had three, and so on and so forth, and it built. But exactly right. Back in the early days, like, that's back 20 years ago now, we didn't have workforce management software. We had no forecasting. We didn't even have a contact center software. Back then, we had essentially an ISDN2. Do you remember? Anyone remembers that kind of technology? Two phone lines put together, two phones I could ring. And that was beautiful. Maybe two of them, then we had four phone lines. And it was like, wow, this is like game changing. So it was hard. And back in the day, Leslie took a lot of the planning of the people at the workforce side on her, and she managed to build the rota around that, how we planned our staff. And that's how it grew from there, from having 1 to 100 staff. We did it through learning on the job. And in recent years, we've got a lot more technology to assist us now. But I have to say it is to assist us. I'm really keen on the fact that technology is a fabulous, beautiful thing. And the stuff that you do at TMAC with the speech analytics and stuff is absolutely unreal. It's game changing for the industry, but it's there to support the industry, for me, not to replace it. Who knows? A couple of decades online, me and you've got great hair, less hair that we might have. It might be replaced. It might be replaced with the robots, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think empathy is quite built into the algorithms to get that working, but it is certainly an exciting future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you've got probably quite a unique perspective, having gone through those times where you had limited staff, trying to stretch them over 24/7 work patterns and trying to do everything by hand. And then to see the benefits that automation and AI and machine learning can bring to that environment, the efficiencies it can drive. But you're absolutely right. It needs to be focused on the employees and the outcomes for the customers and the business themselves. And I'd imagine, especially like running a 24/7 environment, you've got to really focus on your employees more than anything else, because there's not a lot of fat to skim off the top of a BPO operation or an outsourcer operation, let alone when you're stretching that to 24/7 operations. What's your sort of strategy towards building that enthusiasm from your teams and your empowerment of your teams?
Yeah, it's important because when you start a business, you don't need to worry about such things because you are businesses. Your thoughts, your feelings, your kind of personal values, integrity, or whatever are there for what the business is. And I think as you grow as a business, that does become a challenge really, because you need to develop a way, therefore, to articulate it, communicate it to the wider teams, and also to your clients as well, so they get and know who you are. And I think that takes a conscious effort. There's almost a moment where you think, people don't naturally know what you want or how you want to be there. They might get the guideline from your mannerisms and your body language and the way you are, but to actually scale that, it is an absolute challenge. But it's not like any challenge you have. It's about putting a process in place and then trusting that process as well. And once you have that, for instance, at Lennon, we do lots of things around values workshops with the team. Some people join, they go through these values workshops, we do sort of team building exercises in them and talk about what it is to represent our business. And that's not to say we're better than anyone else or anything. It's just who we are, really, who we want to be. And we have particular market sectors that we work in. So we're very, very big and focused on engineering sectors and care sectors in particular, probably because that's where our backgrounds, it's not coincidence, our background's engineering, Leslie's is more care, really. And that's what we focus on. And I think people in the sectors expect a certain level of diligence and care and empathy and gratitude as well for the work that we're doing, serving other people. So it's about talking about that and understanding that's what we do as a business. And if you want to be part of our journey, then absolutely, but you've got to buy into that. Otherwise, possibly it's not the right place for you.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into the technology conversation, in terms of one of the parts of my job that I really enjoy is helping get the agents back to doing what they're supposed to be there to do, which, to your point, is being human. It's not all about solving problems and logical thinking, reasoning, and those sorts of things. And it's great. That is part of the job. But that's the side of the job that technology is really good at helping with.
Yeah.
Can you map out all your customer journeys and help every agent get to consistently the right outcomes for the customer without having too much conscious thought about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what that does is it frees up really good agents to be really good humans,
Yeah.
which is, it's not just a bonus for the business, it's a bonus for the agents themselves. And help seeing the difference that technology makes to those agents is brilliant, because now all of a sudden there's no complaints that I don't have time to apologize because I'm not listening to the customer because I'm trying to figure out how their problem works out. I can actually just listen to them, actively listen and actively respond to them.
And active listening is a massive thing. For Lemon in particular, that's not what we want to do. Where I see the future of tech, and as tech is still coming into the business, is allowing, it's very important, if we can't give our agents time to actively listen and show empathy, because empathy is a thing, we can talk about empathy all day long. People will say that they're empathetic and et cetera, but often what they're really doing is empathizing with themselves and having a conversation and thinking about their own autobiography in their minds. Is think, how would I feel in that situation? That's not empathy. Empathy is how would you feel putting yourself in their shoes, understanding it from their side. And that can be quite hard. You've got to be quite hard on yourself, really, at that point in time. I get to the brass tacks. But the beautiful thing about technology, what he was saying, as a business, we don't bring technology in to cut costs and increase profit margins. And there will be companies out there do that, of course. They want to cut overheads. People are a big overhead, right? We're a service industry. It's a lot of money on our P&L. But that's not the front end operation. Allowing the agents, you said, have more time, to have more agents there, spending more time with the customers on the phone or on the live chat or on WhatsApp or whatever the communication channel is, to connect with them, to have active listening, to empathize, and also use technology to give them that data to help them make good decisions about the account or whatever the query might be, or the fault that's being reported, and make fantastic decisions with the customer in mind. And that's what that's what it aid us, not to put up at the front end and just get rid of all the agents and high five each other. We just say whatever it is. And that's not it for me. And I know it's speaking, as we spoke before, and what you guys are doing TMAC, that's not it for you. I know as well, you're about actually how can we make great things happen, not just how can we make a quick buck. And that's important.
There's a happy medium to be had if you approach it with the right context, in terms of there's a lot that can be done to support the agents whilst also minimizing future overheads as the business grows. I think that for me is probably the beauty of the platforms. You can grow 100% in business, but actually only increase 70% of your overhead rather than 100% that you'd have to otherwise. But to your point, at the same time, improving on that customer experience and the customer service output that drives long-term customer value for the business. I think there's a lot of, I think certainly in the current situation, there's a lot of shortened tenure for senior leaders in businesses, and there's a tendency to look towards short-term margin shrinkage and bottom line.
Yes,
I totally understand why that is. If I was only planning, I was concerned that I was only going to be in a job 18 months because the current climate.
yes,
I'm looking at how I can help myself now, not in 3 years' time when I might not even be with the business.
yeah. But historically, with people offshoring, I would argue as well, where people make short-term decisions, and that's life. I spoke on the Prime Minister today. That's life, isn't it? People have short tenures, and unfortunately, and I think that's where we hit problems. And if you're making, it's hard to plan 10 years in advance, I'll give you that. But if you're making decisions, you need to be looking at 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You do need to be thinking that far in advance. The immediate 3 to 5 years is important. But as you said, if you've got short tenure with your management team, like anything any project you're trying to manage, if you're only looking 2 years ahead, how can I make an impact within 2 years? Generally, you've got to do something that's probably not in the best interest for the long-term viability of the company. And often in the contact center world, when they'll pull things back, they'll do the potentially offshore things. I'm not against offshore if it's a appropriate thing, but just in general, or use technology inappropriately, potentially within the business, to replace staffing where it's not, the balance of the mix isn't right, really. It's not for the best interests of the customer. So you're right, those short-term decisions can be damaging. And it's not with tech, because, coming from a tech background, I remember back in the day, I remember walking in the office at Comcast. So this has been around 90s, 97, 98. So I was still an apprentice. I was with one of the senior engineers at the time. They're called Gareth Davies. And he talked to me. He said, these telephone lines, 64 kilobit phone line, we're actually now testing 2 of them together. We're going to get 128K down a phone line. And I was like, honest, I remember walking the door thing, that blew my mind, 128K. And then over time, it's a roadmap, isn't it? Technology advances. It's not like what can we deploy today? That's the silver bullet. You've got to think on that roadmap, how it develops, how we deploy it over time as a gradual improvement to improve business. But as you say, It's a long-term thought process, not short-termism.
And I think I see a lot of businesses start out with the best of intentions, to be fair. I think you've got to ask a question of the culture of the business and the strategy from the top down and be confident with that before you move forward with things. For me, I think there is a tendency to replace that which can be easily automated. If you're a customer service agent, you're a sales agent that is just going out and ticking boxes and you're just doing what's necessary, I can guarantee you that in 10 years' time, whether it's our technology or somebody else's, that job's going to get removed and replaced with an AI bot that's going to do that job for you because you're not living up to your human potential. And I think that's the key for anybody that's listening to this and they're worried about what's automation going to do for the future. And automation can't replace the human condition. Yeah, and I don't think it ever will, probably.
Not in our lifetime.
Not in our lifetime, yeah. Hopefully until I'm not able to be bothered about technology anymore, and then it's somebody else's problem because that's a world of problems on its own. But I think our CEO, Jimmy, often has the argument with digital platform providers where businesses are looking to remove cost out of their business or reduce cost by servicing customers in an automated way.
Yeah.
And a lot of times our argument actually is the contrary to that, which is surprising a lot of people, is that actually those conversations that are easily automated are your best opportunity to build rapport with your customers and come away with a positive sentiment conversation that builds that rapport, but also builds the customer lifetime value. My car insurance renewal form came through on Saturday as an email. I didn't get a pre-email. I didn't get warning in advance. I just got that email.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Let's give them a call. I called them. I sat through 5 minutes of, you could do this online.
Yeah.
Before I moved to a line that had my policy number, put my policy number in.
Yeah.
No other option to contact them other than an email. So I sent them an email. 3 days later, no response.
Yeah.
Eventually, I ring their claims, and she told me that, actually, the customer service team for that insurer don't have a phone line.
How valued do you feel then? How valued do you feel as a client?
The irony, the next day, a CSAT service dropped into my inbox asking me how I felt that the last year had gone. And I sent them a reply back saying, one, I wouldn't recommend car insurance to my mates. So I don't know why you're asking me how likely I am to recommend it. Like, I don't care how good the insurance has been. I'm not going to, if I'm sat talking about car insurance with my mates who've done something wrong, it needs to be replaced. Second thing is, I've had no reason to contact you throughout the entire year. Nothing's gone wrong. I haven't made a claim. So your service was non-existent as far as I'm concerned. I've paid for something I didn't need to pay for. Yeah, legally I need to have it, but otherwise than that, like it's an inconvenience.
Yes.
And the rest of it is, you've made no attempt to outbound and communicate with me and build that rapport.
Yes.
Well, fair enough, I haven't needed your services. That hasn't stopped you being able to send me a newsletter, send me the odd email now and again.
Yeah.
You can just call me and say, did you know we've got this service here? You've not used it yet, but you've got this service here. Do you want to?
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah. It didn't like that. So for me, it was like those sorts of conversations need to be less automated, need to be more human. And if you build that in from your strategy right at the beginning, and I know it's something you guys are really passionate about, is that relationship, not just with, obviously for yourselves, it's the clients and their customers as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to manage when you're in a very much a service-driven environment, especially in like you say, in care and engineering. It's not like you can ring their customers up and go, how's your lift doing? Is it all right? You can't have that conversation. But I'm willing to bet that you guys have conversations with your clients all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's relationship building, isn't it? It's psychological. For instance, when you're in sales environment, you have to make between 5 and 12 contacts with someone to build that element of trust. And if you go on contact 1 to 4 or 5 even, and you start trying to sell them or tell them your feature and benefits, you're going to split them. They're going to start ghosting you. It's about building trust over time. And I think what a lot of companies do, I suppose in the contact center world, particularly is once that customer is a customer, the kind of like the effort's gone. It's like being in a relationship, and once you're married, you then don't want to speak to each other anymore. And I think car insurance and other insurances and other companies are a similar kind of situation. And what I don't understand, like you pointed out there, is why don't they take the effort during that 12 months, not to pound us and try to upsell, cross-sell things, but just make a contact, any contact. I mean, Dad said it, a text on your birthday, because we have our birthdays, and just say, happy birthday, and yes, it's GDPR, and we can opt out all these things we want, and so forth. But them kind of small contacts, which to an extent can also be automated, make a difference. It builds that relationship with the client, even as daft as it sounds. And it does make it. This when you go back to the end of the year, you're not thinking like you have. 12 months ago, I paid you money. The next time I hear from you is you're sending me an invoice and you put the invoice up by 30% or whatever. And I can't get through to you to speak to you either because it's all via digital. When really, if you got to speak to someone, if someone just answered that phone after I don't know, 3, 4 rings, whatever, 10, 12 seconds, something like that. I'd had a chat with you about it. Even if they said, look, Paul, that's our best price because the world's crazy right now. That's all we can do. And you would feel more value, wouldn't you? To have better respect for that brand. And that's another good thing by the technology doing, I guess you could argue that what you call the heavy lifting or the kind of back end stuff. My point earlier was not therefore to get rid of the front end staff, but then have the staff all there so they've answered your call, so you could do a better service and then better retention, and probably at a lower cost acquisition as well going forward. And while sometimes these things can be hard to have a direct sort of line to return on investment, I think that you have to try a bit harder sometimes to see these kind of intangibles, how does providing a better service improve my bottom line. I think with hard work, you can actually see them results. But then again, like you said, going back to your point, you might not see them directly in 6 months or quarter, 2 quarters, 3 or 4 quarters. It might take a little bit of time. But you look at some of the top end brands out there. I was looking at what's doing recently, like Timpson's Locksmiths or Timpson's and Sells and Ocado in the top 10, John Lewis. These are people where you pick up the phone and they answer it and have a chat and have a talk to you and make you feel like human. And you can't overemphasize how powerful that is for building a brand. It really can't.
Exactly. And to Mike's point there, there's lots of different opportunities. You don't need to be cross-selling and upselling. And the irony is that the conversations that if you approach them, like Mike says there, quarterly service updates, here's what we've done differently in the last 3 months, just so you know. I'm not saying outbound everyone in your CRM, you don't need to outbound every single customer, but as a business, you can look at who's likely to renew, who's not likely to renew, and you can build some data modeling up to say who are the people who are at risk of not continuing on with you next year or whatever. And you can have different campaigns running to speak to those people. But the irony is, if you go out to them with one of those messages, there's a potential then that you've had a conversation that might lead to an upsell or a cross-sell.
Yeah.
If the opportunity presents itself.
Of course, and recommendation as well. Like I said, we perform service level SLRs, as we call them, service level reviews, and we do them anything from weekly, monthly, quarterly, depending on the client's wants and needs as well. What's really important to say, as well as having them face-to-face or video call reviews, which is fantastic. Even newsletters, bits of information, offers, understanding industry news, these can be shared. My one gripe is, though, I've always been determined with how we do this at Lemon, when we do newsletters to our clients and also our prospects, is that the newsletter is about them. And absolutely, then again, it's newsletters or any kind of conversations being, let's tell you all about the beautiful features and benefits our business does and blah, 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 blah. Because you know what? I read our own features and benefits. I get bored because it's not interesting. People don't want to hear what you have to tell about your business. They want to know about them and how you help them. So when we communicate to our clients, that's what we focus on. What's actually going to be able to make a difference to their businesses right now to help them, especially being in a contact center outsourced world. We're heading, I suppose, looking down the barrel of a recession, right? Obviously, all the stuff that's gone on last 40 hours with the government, I'm guessing that's not going to help, and everything's going more in Europe and Brexit. If we throw that in the mix, and the pandemic, things are all over the place. And businesses in the contact center, business like outsourcers, but like Leonard, can be extremely beneficial at these kind of times, because when you work with when you partner with an outsourcer, you've got to get the right outsourcer who has experience in your industry and shares values and you get on with, because it's going to be a relationship again. You've got to be strong together. But if you do get it right, then you have the ability to be flexible, you can scale, and you can be resilient because you can use the resource and the tech that they can provide to really ride the waves, which inevitably will come. And once you do it and you start delegating some of their processes, which for some companies is quite a big delegation, for a lot of people can be quite hard. For some companies, it's a big jump. But when you do it and you're working with the right company, it starts working, my God, that can make a difference. You throw that in and you throw the tech that, the likes of Lemon and other outsourcers can have now. And like what you guys do over at TMAC, it can be an absolute game changer. And I reckon that then allows the client to focus on their core activities. Again, I'm not saying driving cost, but they can go and do, in our world, if it's engineering, it's engineers on the road, truck rolls, fixing faults quickly, that kind of thing, rather than worrying about the resource at the back end.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think it's interesting. I talked to different businesses. One I spoke to last week, who were wanting to make a move to voice from email, that predominantly spoke to their customers via emails. And one of the reasons that they were uncomfortable with moving to voice is they just didn't have the bandwidth to move to it. And it's the insights that we see things happening in the industry. We do a lot of analysis on things like emails. And actually, it was, if you look at the complexity of the things that are being discussed in those conversations, I'm willing to bet my life that the majority of those conversations go on for 5, 6, 7 emails, because there's such a complex number of issues being discussed that if you just had a phone call, it would solve that in a sort of 10, 15-minute conversation.
Yeah.
And then the rest of your agent's time. Now, how long does it take to write an email? 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
And all sorts of little flashes of inspiration that save businesses a hell of a lot of money and actually don't impact on your customer service. So there's all sorts of ways that you can do those sorts of things. And I love talking to small BPOs and outsourcers similar to yourselves, because previously it's been a case where technology was out of reach. It was specialist resources.
Yeah.
I love being able to come in and say, actually, all of those things that you've just mentioned, that's who we are.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, and you're exactly right, because you are. It doesn't go back a few years, and that was it. The big players had the cutting edge technology, and now it's just not the same. And that's what I love, the fact that our business has done a lot of investment in tech in recent years, and we can deploy as good technology for ourselves, but for our clients, as anyone out there in the world, any of the big players, any of the multinationals, they don't have anything that we can't deploy. And to some extent, we're probably more agile than them. We can deploy things faster and in a more dynamic and versatile way. So it's a real leveler. And I love it when we do that for our clients and they can suddenly get a solution which they probably only dreamed of getting, or actually thought they would never get to, but it's absolutely right there at the fingertips now. And it is a fantastic thing. And that's pretty great. It's a very recent change, I would say, with how things have gone with web and the cloud platforms really to start making manageable. So yeah, no, long may that continue, because it does make it that level playing field.
100%. We've hit the 30-minute mark, so on Friday, 15-minute goes and then you blink. I've really enjoyed the conversation today, Martin. Thank you very much for coming along and representing. Hopefully, people listen to the show have got some takeaway points, some useful actions that they can think about. But feel free, anybody who's watching the show, obviously it is live currently. The video will stay live to play back afterwards. Please feel free to ask questions in the comments if you've got anything that comes to mind, or connect with Martin or myself and ask any comments in the DMs if you don't want to do that in a public forum. But more than happy to answer any questions that kind of come back on things. And Martin, good luck with the growth plans for the next couple of years. I think we've got an exciting couple of years planned. Looking forward to seeing the outcomes of it.
It's been a pleasure to be on Vandyport. You do a brilliant job. I love this podcast and the thing you do at TMAC. So hopefully we can talk again and we get another half an hour and finish the stories.
Might need a bit more than half an hour, I think. Awesome. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you next week for our next show. Take care.